I took a risk coming back from my senior year. I had goals, big, huge goals. I wanted to become the all-time leading rusher. I wanted to become the all-time leader in touchdowns. I wanted to become the all-time leader in all-purpose yards, and I wanted to win the Heisman Trophy. And somehow I was able to accomplish all those goals.
So excited to be rejoined with you again, Ricky. What do you remember about Texas OU weekend as a player?
Yeah, so actually against OU we were 2-1-1, 2-1-1, and my fondest memory, it's not that fond, but it's my deepest memory, was my freshman year. And for those of you who don't know, I came from California, and when I got on campus, I heard all the guys talk about Texas OU, and they said, it's like nothing you've ever seen before. The game moves so much faster. And I thought, it's just another football game. And so we drove up on the bus to the state fair, and I ended up with, I think I had 14 carries for 7 yards. And I learned the hard way that it's a tough game. And but I learned the next 3 years I had big games against them.
When we talk about your career, let's go back and let's talk about where some of the drive and the work ethic came from, Ricky. Where did Run Ricky Run is what we all know, but where did that start? Where did that come from?
It started from doing what I love, and whether it was the weight room or the off-season training or in the middle of a football game, I just really loved what I was doing, and so it didn't feel like work. And my mom taught me at an early age that anything that I want to do, I can do. I just have to put my mind to it. And so when I started playing sports, I had the sense that I had the ability to work towards being the best. And so loving what I do and working to be the best and surrounding myself with people that would support me, I think that was the magic formula.
Take me to that Heisman Trophy ceremony. I mean, one of the most revered trophies in all of college sports, something that you get to carry with you for a lifetime. It's one thing to get nominated, but then to hoist that in your hands and to know that that is a title and an honor that will never be taken away from you. What did that mean to you?
Yeah, so it meant a lot, but the truth is, and I don't mean to sound arrogant, but after beating the Aggies, and breaking the all-time rushing record, I pretty much knew that I was going to win the Heisman Trophy, and so the joy was like what I just mentioned. It was the team coming together, and it was Coach Brown's first year, and he did a wonderful job of pulling us all together and making the Heisman Trophy a team goal. And so we were playing the Aggies, and it was, I think, 1st and 10, and I looked up on the scoreboard, and I saw I needed 11 yards to break the record, and I kind of heard a voice in my head saying, we're going to do it on this play. So I get the ball, run into the left, end up breaking into the open field, get a great block from my receiver coming across the field, and I get in the end zone. And to me, that was the moment, and it was special because I think especially when you're a freshman and you go to college, all freshmen when they enter college have big dreams, but not all of them have the ability for those dreams to come to fruition. And I was lucky. I took a risk coming back from my senior year. I had goals, big, huge goals. I wanted to become the all-time leading rusher. I wanted to become the all-time leader in touchdowns. I wanted to become the all-time leader in all-purpose yards, and I wanted to win the Heisman Trophy. And somehow I was able to accomplish all those goals.
You are one of the more dynamic players that I've ever worked with and covered. You were so ahead of the times in terms of your thoughts on cannabis and how it applies to the game in terms of recovery. We've seen a lot of players unsuccessfully challenge the system. You chose to walk away. How hard was that for you, given the fact that so many people had set the bar for you this high based on what you did in college for what you were going to accomplish in the NFL, and you chose to walk away on your own terms?
Yeah. So it's an interesting question. What we've been talking about thus far is how, for the most part, of course I had to work hard, but how easy my career was up until I won the Heisman Trophy. And it was great, and football was great, but I got to a point in my life where I realized maybe football is not everything. And I started thinking about, if I weren't playing football, what else would I do? And the ideas that came up really inspired me. And so I was kind of in a pickle where I wasn't sure, do I want to keep playing football or do I want to do something different? And about this time, one of my roommates introduced me to marijuana. And so, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure you guys aren't going to admit it here, but if you ever partook, you'll realize that sometimes you start having different kinds of thoughts in your head. And I felt kind of freed up to allow my imagination to really imagine not playing football anymore. And it gave me enough herbal courage to walk away. And I'm glad that I did, for a couple of reasons. One, I was talking upstairs to someone about this idea of when you retire from football after you've given pretty much your whole life to it, a lot of us are at a point where we're like, this is all we've done, and it becomes difficult to start over. So when I retired for the first time, I was 27 years old, and I got a chance to spend a year traveling around the world and getting to really know myself. And I was fortunate enough that Nick Saban came to Miami and invited me back to the NFL, and I played another 6 years. But during those 6 years, the last 6 years of my career, I knew who I was. And so in the off season, after practice, when I had time off, I was continually growing and educating myself so that when I retired for good the second time, I was passionate about what I was moving into.
When I think about you and when you entered the NFL, there was so much hype. I mean, I think of the Sports Illustrated cover of you and Mike Ditka and the wedding dress and the groom and the fact that they traded the house to get you to New Orleans. What was that like in the spotlight? And then I've seen it with a lot of players. They leave the game and they struggle with, who am I now? What's my identity? To your point, you were talking about starting over.
Yes, yeah. So when I was drafted, Mike Ditka and the Saints traded all 7 picks and then the first round pick for the next year. And so from the outside looking in, yes, there was a lot of pressure on me. But if you remember the way that I structured my contract, very high incentives, is I put more pressure on myself. And, I've always been the kind of person where I wanted to earn what I made. And for me, I got a big signing bonus being a first round pick. And so I said, the signing bonus is my reward for what I've done, but everything I do forward, I want to make sure that I'm earning it.
Which is so unreal when you think about today's players and the way they structure their contracts.
And the crazy part was, I had really come up with this plan over years, that I wanted to make a splash with my opportunity to go pro in football. And I assumed that everyone would applaud and say, wow, this is very honorable, but that's not what happened.
What advice would you give to these young players who are trying to do it differently? I think of guys like Richard Sherman, one of the smartest guys in the league, Cal Berkeley educated. A lot of these guys are beginning to, Jalen Smith, Notre Dame. These guys are putting a premium on their business and life after football. What would you say to them?
It's another good question. I think the best time to reach them is in high school, maybe early in college, because I understand most players when they go to college, they realize this is an opportunity for me to get to the next level and get to the NFL. And I think sometimes they underestimate the opportunity of being at an educational institution. And if I could go back and do it again myself, I would have taken classes and prepared myself for life after football, even life during football. I would have taken business classes. I would have taken accounting classes. I would have taken marketing classes. I would have taken classes that would have prepared me for where I was headed. And so, and what I learned after my retirement, after I traveled and got to know myself, was I've developed this talent. I think of being a football player as kind of like being an entrepreneur, it's like a startup. Is you work on yourself, you work on your craft, and then finally you get pro and then sold, right? And so I think we can change that and we can lease ourselves and realize that the platform we have as professional athletes is just that, a platform. And if we can go into the NFL thinking, how can I use this platform to build my life when I'm done, then I think we can make more use out of it and we don't feel as exploited or used in that situation.
Well, you've talked about life after football and the importance of preparing yourself for that. And I think so much about how you sort of laid the groundwork, you did the research, you were so passionate about what cannabis can do for people's lives. You are now the owner of a business, CBD Wellness.
Yeah,
Tell me about that business and what's gone into that.
Yeah, so Real Wellness is the name of the company. And, it all started, I got a phone call from a former teammate of mine, Kyle Turley, who does a lot of advocacy in the space. And he said, hey, why don't you come to this conference and tell your story? At the time, I was back in school living in Austin, and I said, it's not a good time for me. Hung up the phone, and then I thought about it for a moment, and I was like, everybody knows I smoke anyway. And so I called them back up and said, okay, I'll do it. And I went to speak, and it was extremely healing and extremely cathartic for me to sit on a stage like this in front of about this many people and for the first time share my truth publicly. And after I left the stage and walked around the conference, multiple people came up to me and told me how much of an inspiration I was. And that was the first time that I had that experience around marijuana. And at these conferences, there are different vendors. And so I walked around talking to the different vendors, and after doing about 10 of these conferences, I started to realize, I have an opportunity to do something in this space. And I thought to myself, what do I really want to do in this space? And, I've reflected on my past with cannabis. And for me, cannabis wasn't recreational. I wasn't a party type of guy. I'm more of an introvert, philosophical kind of guy. And so I realized cannabis for me really was medicine. And so I took my knowledge, I've been studying herbalism for over 15 years, so I took my knowledge and I said, I'm gonna make real medicine. And so real wellness is really a culmination of my experiences and my studies and my passion.
There you go. Guys, thank you so much for coming to this event. Ricky, thank you for taking time out to come talk to us. And can I get a big hookup?
Thank you.